Most people fear fog. They slow down when they cannot see the road ahead. They hesitate. They grip the wheel. They wish for clarity. I have spent most of my life quietly hoping the fog would stay, because fog does something very interesting to human behavior. It separates those who panic from those who simply keep moving. Uncertainty has always been treated like a storm, something to escape, something dangerous. But I learned early that uncertainty is not a storm, it is cover. And for someone who understands patience, cover is a gift. The loud world believes wealth is built through certainty, through predictions, through bold declarations and confident forecasts. I have rarely found that to be true. The greatest advantages I have ever seen appeared when nobody was comfortable, when nobody was sure, when the crowd began searching for reassurance instead of truth. In those moments, something very predictable happens. Human nature begins to leak. Fear grows louder, ego grows louder, opinions multiply. And suddenly, the world becomes full of people who cannot stop talking. And talking, in markets and in life, is often the most expensive habit a person can develop. Silence has always been misunderstood. Many think silence means hesitation, or weakness, or a lack of conviction. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is position. A forest at night looks still, almost peaceful. But the stillness hides movement. Predators do not announce themselves. They wait. They watch. They conserve energy. They understand that survival does not belong to the loudest creature in the forest. It belongs to the most patient one. I have watched markets for decades now. Booms, crashes, celebrations, panic. Entire generations convinced they have finally figured everything out. And every time certainty becomes fashionable, something dangerous begins to happen beneath the surface. People start performing their intelligence instead of protecting it. They begin announcing things. They announce how much they made. They announce what they are buying next. They announce how clever their strategy is. And slowly, almost invisibly, they surrender the very advantages that created their success. Wealth is an invisible game. The moment it becomes visible, it begins to weaken. That idea alone has saved me more money than any spreadsheet ever could. Because human beings do not simply observe success, they react to it. Envy is one of the quietest forces in the world. Most people would never admit feeling it, yet it shapes behavior everywhere. In boardrooms, in families, in friendships, in markets. Success changes the way people look at you. It invites curiosity first, then comparison, then something darker. And once comparison begins, sabotage is never far behind. Sometimes the sabotage comes from competitors, sometimes it comes from regulators, and sometimes, most painfully, it comes from people much closer than that. I learned long ago that wealth does not disappear only through bad investments. It disappears through attention. Attention attracts pressure. Pressure attracts interference. And interference slowly erodes good decisions. This is why the most valuable asset I have protected over the years was not capital. It was information. Information is leverage, not the kind printed in financial textbooks. The quieter kind. The kind that exists in knowing something, while others assume you do not. I never had much interest in proving intelligence to the room. Rooms are temporary. Compounding is not. So I built my habits around something I privately came to call the silent advantage. It is not a strategy you can write in a formula, it is a discipline of restraint. Most people believe wealth is about doing more. In reality, wealth often comes from refusing to do certain things, refusing to speak when others are eager to hear themselves talk, refusing to reveal what does not need revealing, refusing to turn a long game into a performance. Over time, this discipline became clearer to me through a handful of simple behaviors, not rules in the rigid sense, more like quiet guardrails that kept life and investing from drifting into unnecessary exposure. One of the earliest lessons appeared during a dinner many years ago. A man at the table had recently become very wealthy. Overnight success. The kind newspapers like to celebrate. He spoke proudly about his fortune. Exact numbers, exact growth, exact plans for the next 10 years. Everyone at the table listened with admiration. But something else appeared in the room as well. Eyes changed. Curiosity turned into measurement. Measurement turned into quiet tension. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere had shifted, subtly, almost invisibly. A few months later, that same man found himself surrounded by new expectations. Business proposals, demands from relatives, competitive pressures from rivals who suddenly knew exactly how large a target he had become. Nothing catastrophic happened, but the calm that once protected his thinking disappeared. It had been traded for visibility. I made a quiet decision that night. The exact size of my wealth would always remain indistinct. Numbers create gravity. They pull attention toward them, and attention is rarely neutral. Ambiguity, on the other hand, creates distance. Distance preserves freedom. Another lesson arrived not from success, but from a mistake. Early in my career, I once spoke too confidently about an investment I was considering. Nothing reckless, just enthusiasm shared too freely. Within weeks, the idea was everywhere. Competing capital flooded in, prices changed, conditions shifted. The opportunity did not disappear entirely, but the advantage did. Markets reward originality only briefly. Once a good idea becomes public conversation, its value begins to dissolve. I stopped announcing future moves after that. A chess player does not lean across the board and explain his next 3 strategies, not because he is unfriendly, but because explanation changes the game. Quiet preparation preserves the move. The world often mistakes secrecy for arrogance. It is not arrogance, it is respect for timing. I have also seen remarkable people damage their own advantage by generously sharing the very insights that made them successful. They believed generosity required transparency, but information has weight. When you hand someone the map that leads to your edge, you are not simply being kind. You are diluting the territory. I prefer generosity that strengthens others without weakening the structure that sustains me. That distinction matters. The same principle extends into something far more personal. Children. Money has a peculiar way of distorting effort when it arrives too easily. I have watched families across generations where wealth was intended as protection, but slowly became poison. When comfort is guaranteed, ambition quietly fades. The hunger that builds resilience disappears. And the inheritance that once represented decades of discipline becomes a cushion that softens character. I never believed wealth should remove the necessity of becoming capable. It should remove unnecessary suffering, perhaps, but not the requirement to build something of one's own. Otherwise, the fortune becomes less like fertile soil, and more like shade so dense nothing new can grow beneath it. Then there is the matter of broadcasting success. Modern culture has developed a strange habit of converting every private milestone into public theater. Charity is announced, achievements are displayed, even personal struggles are turned into performances, but attention is addictive. And addiction rarely strengthens judgment. When applause becomes part of the reward system, decisions subtly change. They begin to serve visibility instead of long-term value. A quiet donation feeds the same people, but it does not feed the ego. And an ego that stays hungry is a useful companion in investing. Even pain, I learned, benefits from discretion. People often feel compelled to share every setback, but vulnerability, when displayed indiscriminately, becomes information others can use, not always maliciously, but information always travels farther than intended. Silence in those moments creates space for recovery without commentary. The longer I observed markets and people, the more obvious something became. The loudest participants were rarely the ones accumulating the most durable wealth. Noise attracts attention, but compounding prefers calm environments. Think about a forest again. The tallest trees did not grow because they rushed upward in a single season. They grew because year after year they quietly absorbed sunlight, rain, and time. No announcement, no spectacle, just steady accumulation. Markets reward the same patience. Uncertainty, strangely enough, accelerates this advantage. When the future appears cloudy, people shorten their time horizons. They become impatient for clarity. Prices swing wildly because emotions swing wildly. And for someone willing to remain calm inside the fog, opportunities begin appearing in plain sight. Fear discounts value. Excitement inflates it. Both are temporary, but patience can outlive both. I have made some of my most satisfying investments during moments when the world was convinced disaster was permanent. Not because I am fearless, but because uncertainty discourages competition. The crowd retreats to safety. Headlines grow dramatic. Predictions multiply. And quietly, beneath the noise, assets change hands at prices that only make sense if the future truly is hopeless. History rarely supports that conclusion. Civilizations adapt. Businesses evolve. Human ingenuity tends to survive its own mistakes. Uncertainty does not eliminate opportunity, it reveals who understands time. As the years passed, this perspective simplified many things for me. I stopped searching for perfect clarity. Perfect clarity often arrives when prices already reflect it. Instead, I learned to look for moments when the world felt uncomfortable, but the long-term reality remained intact. Those are the moments when patience becomes an advantage rather than a burden. Stillness becomes strategy, silence becomes protection, and uncertainty becomes a kind of shelter. Of course, this approach rarely looks impressive from the outside. It does not produce dramatic headlines. It often appears slow. But slow is exactly what allows compounding to work without interruption. And interruption is the enemy of wealth. So I kept my life simple. I avoided unnecessary visibility. I allowed others to underestimate me when it served the situation. Underestimation is a remarkable form of freedom. When expectations are low, pressure disappears. And without pressure, thinking becomes clearer. The irony is that many people chase recognition believing it will strengthen their position. But recognition creates obligations. Obligations create distractions, and distractions slowly weaken focus. I have never found focus to be improved by applause. The most valuable years of my career often passed quietly. No announcements, no predictions, no grand declarations. Just observation, waiting, occasional action, then more waiting. People sometimes imagine that discipline feels dramatic. In truth, it feels ordinary. It looks like doing nothing while others rush. It feels like remaining calm while others search for reassurance. It means accepting that the best move today might simply be restraint. This is not glamorous, but glamour rarely compounds. Eventually, the philosophy becomes almost automatic. Protect information. Let results remain partially invisible. Allow others to talk more than you do. Invest where fear has exaggerated reality. And never forget that the greatest advantage in uncertain times is emotional stability. The fog returns again and again throughout life. Markets will always cycle through confidence and panic. People will always chase attention and validation. But those patterns, once understood, become predictable. And predictability inside uncertainty is a rare form of clarity. When I look back now, the most powerful realization was surprisingly simple. Uncertainty never destroyed wealth. Impatience did. Ego did. Visibility did. The desire to be recognized before the work had fully matured did. Silence prevented most of those mistakes. Silence protected time, and time, more than brilliance, builds fortunes. So when the world begins demanding certainty again, when predictions grow louder and confidence becomes fashionable, I become a little more careful, a little quieter, because the fog is usually returning. And somewhere inside that fog, opportunity is moving slowly, waiting for the few people patient enough to keep walking. The strange thing about the invisible game is that the winners rarely look like winners while the game is being played. They look calm, unhurried, almost unnoticed. But beneath that quiet surface, something powerful is happening. Decisions are compounding, advantages are being protected, and time is doing what it has always done for those who respect it. Multiplying patience. In the end, strength in investing rarely comes from speaking more. It comes from needing to say less.